This is an article written, United Methodists ask court to keep 44 Alabama churches from suing for their property, and judge declines. So I've been covering Alabama West Florida annual conference for some time. I've reported on Harvest Church in Dothan that's filed against the conference. There was another church recently that's mentioned in this article that filed against the conference. There was a group of 44 churches that filed together under the NCLL against the conference. They were not successful. Now, individual churches in that 44 are suing the conference. The conference has asked the state court to intervene and keep them from filing charges, and the state court has said no. So we'll read some of this article. This is published just yesterday. No, 23rd was a week ago. And it was written by Greg Garrison. The AWF conference of the UMC asked a judge on Monday to order 44 churches that had sued to keep their property and leave the denomination to stop suing as individual churches. On Tuesday, Montgomery County Circuit Judge Brooke E. Reed declined the request after previously ruling the dispute should be handled in church courts. In its original defense in the case, the Alabama West Florida Conference argued that civil courts had no standing to decide the case. In November 10th, 2023, the court agreed and said the churches would have to take their case for a hearing on disaffiliation to the denominational court system. On May 31st, 2024, the Alabama Supreme Court upheld that ruling, so that was a defeat for those 44 churches. But this week, the Alabama West Florida Conference went back and asked the original judge for a further ruling to prevent churches from bringing individual lawsuits arguing to maintain ownership of the property. On Tuesday, Reed stood by the original ruling and declined to enforce any settlement preventing churches from suing individually or ordering them to transfer the property to the denomination. Reed said the court did not rule on those issues. And then it gives some good history that's good to spend your time with. But here's what's at stake, is there are a lot of churches that are wanting to avoid being part of the UMC if they can keep it from happening. It's obviously a faithless covenant body. It is not a good group that they want to be a part of, and so they want their way out. But generally speaking, courts have refused to get involved in favor of local churches, saying that the trust clause does hold and annual conferences are legitimate holders of those trusts, and it's a problem. It's a big problem. So I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of distracted by stuff here. What's going to happen now is, well, let's look at the list of churches that have filed. First Methodist Church. Well, wait, Selma Methodist Church is the one that we talked about the other day, founded in 1835. It's the most recent of the group of 44 churches to file its own lawsuit, saying it never signed a trust clause giving the denomination authority over its property. We talked about that the other day. First Methodist Church of Demopolis sued in August, saying it has owned its property throughout its history. Guy's Chapel, a 114-year-old church in Baldwin County, sued the conference in July. Then we got Harvest Church. So what you're looking at is potentially each individual church can sue the annual conference. And for each individual suit, the conference has to defend itself. So what's happening now is resources on both ends are getting drained. So the UMC giving has dropped off ever since the last general conference for obvious reasons. And now we're looking at a situation where they might be going bankrupt from all of these different lawsuits. So they're asking the state for respite, and the state is saying, no, we're going to let them sue you to oblivion. And so they have a decision to make if they're going to let themselves be depleted in this way, or if they are going to cut some of these churches loose. The Harvest Church Dothan case is particularly interesting because they're suing not just the annual conference, but the General Council of Finance and Administration, which would have huge implications. So keep your eye on this stuff. This is exciting. It's called a Pyrrhic victory whenever you win a battle, but you're not in a position to win the war. Actually, it's harmed you to win because you have exhausted your resources. So that might be what happens here if churches have the boldness. In general, I've said I think it's better for churches to be on a defensive position than an offensive position. But even so, if the position is that conferences, in order to do what they want to do, have to go broke, then they can't win. So if enough local churches are prepared to litigate and bankrupt their annual conferences, then that's a thing. What happens if 30 of these 44 churches file against the annual conference? We may or may not get to see what that looks like, but that's kind of an encouraging situation.